All right. Mike French, I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you.
For anybody, listening or watching, I want to do a little background on you to kind of
Okay.
set the stage. I'm sure I'm going to butcher it, and I'm going to ask you to dive in more. But currently, the executive director of La Plata County Economic Development Alliance, which is not a mouthful at all.
Yeah, we call it the Alliance for
But
short.
yeah,
Yeah.
but before that, successful entrepreneur, founder, father, community leader, nonprofit. Uh, I'm trying to think what else, but you've worn so many hats, which is why I'm so excited that you're giving me, a little bit of your time, because your time is incredibly valuable. And so I'm very grateful that you're here. And before we dive into, I wanted to also take an opportunity to very sincerely thank you for the involvement that you've had and the impact that you've made on not only me personally, but my business. I think I told you at one point on the phone, I'm not sure what I did to deserve Mike French's advocacy, but I'm sure grateful for it. Because you're just one of those guys that every time I get to talk to you, I leave with a different perspective that is usually pretty powerful. You've got a great way of, and that's part of where our conversation will hopefully go is, hearing how you got to where you are now with all this wisdom. But it's just been so powerful. And I hope you know how much I've noticed it and how much I appreciate it. I mean, there's been even times when I'll post a job and you'll call me and say, have you thought that through? Is that how you should be hiring or that? And I just so appreciate it because you've made a tremendous impact on, like I said, me and my business. And so thank you.
No, thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for people like you in my life, right? So thank you for the opportunity.
Of course.
Yeah.
So where I want to start, because I think one of the most unique things about your story is, well, there's a few different unique things that I'm hoping you can help me unpack, but obviously the success that you've experienced in business is huge. But I think one of the most unique things too that I want to hear about is also how young you were when you started your business journey. And I know it had even started sooner, but you were in your 20s, I think, when you started the IT company.
Right.
Walk me through that. I want to hear like day one. I want to hear the initial story of you starting that initial company.
Yeah, thank you. Memory road here. I've told you this, that there are very few true serial entrepreneurs. I think people fall into entrepreneurship in one way, shape, or form, and anybody that believes that they have not been graced with some kind of fortune is kind of kidding themselves. You have to be at the right place at the right time. And sure, I mean, luck is preparation meets opportunity, and I also believe that, but you have to have the opportunity be created. And to me, there takes some fortune for that to happen. But yeah, I was in my late 20s, and I was in grad school. I needed a part-time job, and I started working with a IT company selling high-end technology to Sandia National Labs, and we ended up doing business with the state of New Mexico and had some what I think you would say are premier accounts, right? And in the late 90s, there was a lot of innovation in technology. The company that we worked for was a Texas-based company, and it had sold, and they were divesting of the business that we were in, wanted us to start selling desktops and go into the education market. And yeah, it was hard to leave what we had built. And it was myself and another gentleman. And we went back to the manufacturer. At the time, it was Cisco Systems, and they're now a giant 800-pound gorilla.
I was gonna say, ever heard of them?
They're a Godzilla, but in the late 90s they weren't, right? They had real competitors and they were kind of single threaded at the time. Now they're very diverse, but we went back to them and said things are going to change, and they actually gave us the motivation. So why don't you start your own thing, and we'll support you. We'll find you some credit. We'll help you with business. And so I went ahead and took the leap of faith, not knowing anything, and one thing led to another, and we had just a crazy 7-8 years of explosion. Right time, right place, and it was baptism by fire in terms of entrepreneurship, small business that expanded very quickly into new markets, new products, enterprise. It was quite the ride.
Can you give me an idea? 7-8 years of explosive growth, as you worded it.
Yeah.
Not looking for numbers, but percentages and like team size, even like help paint the picture for.
Yeah.
Because I sometimes I think, and the reason I'm asking because I'm in the thick of a fair amount of growth as we speak, and I think sometimes people don't comprehend what a whirlwind real rapid growth is. So anyway, I'm just curious, like year over year percentages, because I'd imagine year one or first little while, you're wearing so many hats. You're doing the sales. You're helping with all of the different components of the business. What did the growth look like in terms of team members and expansion percentages and stuff like that? I mean, we're looking at exponential growth, or
I mean, it started with a handful of people, and we had literally triple digit growth for 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was nuts. And it was the time to do it. It wasn't unrealistic at that time. It was just another startup, just another IT hyper growth company.
And this was, just to make sure my dates are right, late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So 7-8 years later, we're starting to flirt with 07, 08?
More like 06, 05, 06.
Okay.
And we had sort of come to a crossroad where we had to either buy an organization or sell to an organization. We couldn't really stay where we were. It was unstable. And a lot of that was because of the economics, but it was also, we were starting to be on very large companies' radars, and we couldn't grow anymore unless we had a lot of exposure, right? And so, and staying where we were was not an option, right? So we were either going to buy like company in close geographies, or entertain an acquisition. So which we did. We were purchased by a publicly traded company, and then a whole new journey started of hyper growth.
Just with a different logo or different brand, but
transitioning from a closely held small business to a publicly traded NASDAQ company, there's a little bit of a shift.
Yeah, and what was that like? Because I relate to the world of being a founder.
Yeah,
and it's my baby, like
right.
holding it close. What was it like for you? Because when you did sell, you stayed on.
Yep.
What was that like from now you have a boss, mm-hmm. you don't have full control anymore.
Right.
Was that hard?
It was extremely hard for the first few months, just to mentally accept that. But I had work to do. I had an earnout, a multi-year earnout, which you don't hear about anymore these days. But back then,
can you define that for me?
In the terms of the acquisition, if it's cash plus stock, in this case it was, or all cash or all stock, what have you. But sometimes they leave an incentive on the table and say, if you can hit these growth metrics that you're projecting that we bought you on,
Right.
then we will make good on the remainder of the commitment, right?
Got it.
Whether it's stock, cash, what have you.
So
These
you
are
have
incentives.
to perform.
You have to perform, yeah, or else you don't get the full deal.
Yeah.
So we had a pretty decent size earnout, which we crushed. So it made me feel like we didn't sell for enough.
Of course.
But that's water under the bridge. But we, I had work to do. But in my mind, it was, let's do the earnout, and then I'm done, and then I'll figure out what my next chapter in life looks like. And that didn't pan out. I hit the earnout, rolled into the executive management team, and really soon thereafter, that public company was bought by a private equity firm, and combined with about 3 or 4 other companies of similar size and scale to make a multi-billion-dollar organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a wild, you think about the contrast between
5 guys.
It's kind of, you're winding down and you're saying, hey, we're not ready to give this up yet.
Right.
Let's start our own, to, multi-billion-dollar powerhouse. I'm curious, which, by the way, is just remarkable. And I think, to your point of, if you're a serial entrepreneur, or, if opportunity knocks, or whatever, some version of that, I think, is most entrepreneurs' dream, at least, if they're being totally honest with everybody. So I'd love to hear the early days, those first 8 years when was your title, were you the president? I know you were the founder, but yeah. What was the hardest part about maintaining that rapid of growth? The first 5 years.
Yeah. Well, you're never thinking about the sell, right? And I think so many businesses, and you and I have had this conversation, so many entrepreneurs or business owners start a business or have an idea, but they never think about the exit strategy. That they feel like there's time to figure that out, and there is, but it really, what your long-term intention is important in terms of how you structure a business. And when we started, it was because we wanted a job, quite frankly.
Right, yeah.
And there's really good money. We were sales guys, right? We were biz dev guys. We weren't entrepreneurs. We were carrying a bag and selling a really hot technology into like great markets, and
wanted to keep selling it.
Like, yeah, I
relate to that.
I would have been fine with a support system around me and being a single contributor, individual contributor, no problem. But that wasn't the option, right? The option on the table was, you got to start your own gig in order to maintain that. And so we were just making it happen, worried about missed opportunities, competing fiercely. We were hyper competitive, and really in the grind, and not thinking one iota about, this could lead to, multiple markets, and then we could sell. That wasn't even on the radar. We were too young and quite frankly, having too much fun. We were burning the candle at both ends. Play hard, work hard.
Work hard.
Work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
It was all the above. But we were just having fun, and the risk was not in the equation. So we were doing it with our own money. So it's not like we had investors. We didn't take the traditional kind of startup route where we were using other people's money, had investors, had mentors, had incubation. None of that. That was, I think a lot of that really got baked, after that period of where a lot of the startups became very successful, and then there was a recipe for it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was, that was a whole different era. I want to say almost a different generation.
Yeah.
and it was exciting, and it was exciting to evolve from that small business to public to then really as big as it gets, and be part of that ride for almost 20 years.
So at what point did you, because I relate so much to, having fun and just working hard and, I don't know, I almost like taking it day by day type of approach, just getting it done because we need jobs type of mentality.
Yeah.
At what point for you did you realize, holy cow, this is something? Like this is now a company.
Yeah.
I didn't just build a job.
Right.
I've all of a sudden there's a whole business here.
I think I realized it when we started our third market, and now it had some scale. We were competing with multi-tier competitors, and then we were on the radar of much larger companies, and that's when the game changed. It's like, okay, we're no longer in Kansas Toto. We're playing in a bigger park now.
Punching above our weight class.
Punching way above our weight class. And we were pretty legitimate because we had really good talent, very good engineering talent. And that's what it took to compete at, it wasn't fulfillment. It was really design, architecture, implementation, professional services. It was, but we were selling big iron. And so they were high dollar purchases. And when, the higher the dollar, the more people it attracts.
Yeah.
Right. And, the stakes got pretty high in terms of what our nut was every single month. And then the annual budgets started to change a lot. You just started adding zeros.
Right. Now there's another comma.
Yeah, exactly. And that's when it was like, wow, you're responsible for a lot of people's livelihoods who are starting families, who are buying homes. It became real really fast.
When it became real, that third market, or just kind of this evolution moment. From the founder's seat, describe to me the emotions. I mean, are you feeling proud? Are you feeling excited? Are you feeling scared?
You're just in it. You kind of don't look back and you kind of don't look forward. You just, you're in it, and
it's just today's problem. It just looks different.
Yeah, exactly. And you're really thinking about the next step and how to execute and what you can do to compete, and what are opportunities that you're not getting to. And fortunately, I had a lot of really smart people around me. I had some mentors who were at the end of their careers and had started consulting and really helped me out in terms of vision and structure. We had just incredible support.
You had a Mike French?
I had multiple Mike Frenches. Thank God.
I'm glad to hear that.
Who were much better than I am today. Yeah, and and I'm really indebted to those people. And I've tried to go back now and find them and tell them, hey, I don't know if I ever thanked you but you would not believe what happened, right? And it was. And some of them were part of that journey the whole way, which is awesome.
Because did you start to feel like, because obviously there was these moments when, it became a thing. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
The business has gotten to the point where it
life
is.
Of its own, yeah.
You kind of talked about that you're just in it, as the founder or the CEO. But were you also aware enough to realize that you had to keep working on you? Like, I'm just envisioning seeking out these founders, or, reading, or I'm curious how your perspective of your responsibility evolved and how you evolved, because, at one point it's you and a couple buddies,
right,
to oversimplify,
Yeah,
but you know,
sure.
it's some guys selling to keep selling, to now all of a sudden, like you said, you've got employees with families and mortgages
Right.
and, you know, big clients and all of that. I'd love to hear from you how you looked at yourself and your responsibility and your seat as the business evolved
Yeah.
too, and what actions you took.
I think professionally, I realized I needed to grow and evolve and groom myself, and reached out for help. Personally, there are some voids, and now that I look back, and it's really easy to recognize, and that's why when I talk to people that are in the same boat, starting a business, I really try to make sure that people look at it on both sides of that coin. So I liken it to kind of an athlete, right? You get you get a young quarterback and you put them in the game and they're not quite ready. They're going to rise to the occasion, right? They're going to, or not, but more times than not, they do. And you thought they were not ready, but they probably were. But they're still the boy underneath the helmet, right? And so, yeah, I think on the personal side, I didn't quite have the mentorship to really ask me the hard questions and really challenge me about, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What do I want? And where's this all going to go? And, those are questions that if you are not emotionally mature enough, they come much later in life.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think, and obviously, you know, speculative and benefit of hindsight and whatever, but do you think had you asked yourself those questions in, let's call it, the first 5 years, that things would have been different? And if so, how?
Maybe. Yeah, it probably wouldn't have been as bold and even to a certain extent assumptive, and there's when you have some of those ingredients, it quickly confidence turns into arrogance, and you know and so I don't think I was very well grounded, and in a sort of way that it was kind of a good thing at the
I was
time.
just going to say,
Yeah.
part of me is like, man,
Yeah.
assumptive seems like a great trait for a founder.
Absolutely. When you're not scared and you're not worried about failure, and it's all one big experiment, you're going to go for it.
Yeah.
And you're not going to think twice or hesitate, but you also have to make good decisions and come back to some values and ethics. The thing about, and we were having fun, and granted we were making money, but I don't think money was a scoreboard. I mean, it is in that world, but for me, it was the success and what I mean by success is like the wins, the camaraderie of the team, and you know that. I mean, leaders kind of thrive on that, but when you start talking about bigger dollars and in this scale, as companies grow and then they become really big, the ethics and values really come to question, because people will do strange things for money.
Mm-hmm.
And if money's the most important thing, it becomes easier to sort of trade some values and even ethics at times for the deal, right? And it's like, I can let this one go, and yeah, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I think across the board, at least with a long time horizon,
Yeah.
the folks that just pursue money are usually the folks that don't get it. And it's kind of a counterintuitive reality to realize that pursuing the other things, staying aligned with values and ethics and camaraderie and, building something that you're proud of, the end result will be likely way more money than just pursuing
Yeah.
money. But I think for so many people, that is so hard to grasp.
Yeah, I see so many people start their careers or make career decisions just based on money, and I recognize that the financial piece is an important variable and it's part of the equation. But if it's the sole focus, if my goal is to make X amount of money this year, or have a net worth of X, that's not a very strong goal.
Yeah.
And it's going to lead to some emptiness. And because even if you get there, you're not fulfilled, and it's never enough.
It's like that.
Never enough.
You know how they say that the joy's in the journey, which way oversimplifies it.
Yeah.
But I think in so many ways in life and business, whatever it is, if you can figure out a way that you measure fulfillment along the way,
Right.
you'll go way further anyway.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, the goal is to keep playing, because otherwise you're just going to keep moving the goalpost. What is the
100%.
dollar amount
Yeah.
this year? Well,
Yeah.
what's next year?
Yeah. Well, and then you make promises to yourself, and you make promises to your, to others, your significant other, your coworkers. Oh, if we can get to here, then this will change. We got to there, and but we need one more year, or one more step, or one more
investment.
And it's just it's a fool's game, to be honest. And I think the cliche is do what you love and the money will come. And I think there's a twist on it. Like, have purpose, seek fulfillment, be disciplined, and really be a master of your craft. And I guarantee you opportunities will present themselves, and I guarantee you the money will be there. It may not be like the rock star money, right? You have to be in the right industry, but you'd be surprised how people make money.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
One of the biggest, so, I mentioned when I started my gratitude to you for the support throughout Ascent since I started it. And I knew you before I started Ascent, but one of the biggest eye-opening experiences for me since starting my own business has been some clarity on just how abundant the world actually is.
Yeah.
A whole new perspective on that than
Right.
I had, in previous jobs. I mean, I even look at pricing and, what proposals I would bring to the table and,
Yeah.
Things like that. And now I've realized, and it's been cool for me to see, like, purposely trying to fill a need regardless of budget, and focusing on that. And then
Right.
the budget is what it is.
Right.
It's going to cost what it's going to cost. How many people sitting across the table from me understand that and buy it because we know of the impact we're going to make? Anyway, it's been cool, just to your point of, you'd be surprised how people make money. You'd also be surprised how much there is.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to chase it.
No, I mean, it's interesting that we're having this conversation in Durango, Colorado, right? Because it's
We're going to talk about housing?
I
No,
mean,
I'm
it's
just
a
kidding.
tiny. Well, we can, but
I'm kidding.
It's a tiny little town in rural Colorado, and I shouldn't say tiny, but it's a small town in rural Colorado, and it's yet still opportunities exist here, right? There's still a volume play in one way, shape, or form, and it's very interesting to have been in these large markets and then see how some of that stuff is still true here in Durango in a rural, because it's a global economy now, right? In most aspects, not all, but in most aspects, it's a digital economy, and there's abundance. And I think most people come from, at least I know I did, and And I was having this conversation with my wife maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, and the recognition that I have habitually come from a place of scarcity. And it was like I collect things and I have two of everything. Why? When I only need one. And it's scarcity, and I think like business people also come from a place of scarcity. And think about the startup mentality. It's all scarcity. We need every single deal that comes across the table, right? As opposed to, no, let's figure out who we are, what we want to go after, and not all business is good business. That's very hard to do.
You're telling me. So it's interesting because you talk about that scarcity mentality, and I want to unpack that a little bit. But the way that I've viewed benchmarks, I guess I'll call it, in my life, and you might think I'm crazy for this, but it's similar to the scarcity idea. But I am always looking at how I could just elevate my rock bottom.
Yeah.
Like I always look at life situations of what would the worst case, well, at least now, if I lost everything, I would at least have, my home and my family and my kids. And I've always kind of looked at things, and maybe it's similar with, kind of the entrepreneurship mindset, scarcity or rock bottom. But I've always kind of, and I think it's helped me because looking at the fact that I just now elevated my rock bottom, and sometimes it's slight, I joked with my dad for a long time that my rock bottom is his basement. So I'm really grateful that he has a nice basement. But, as it kind of went up, it also instilled in me gratitude for what I had. Mm-hmm. And I've struggled with that of like this constant pursuit, but also taking time to be grateful and reflect that, like, by all definitions, we've made it. We're successful. We have the things. So I'm curious, that scarcity mindset, did you bring that to entrepreneurialism, or did you learn that from entrepreneurialism?
Oh, no. That's family of origin stuff. That's and I think that carried through in business of being hyper competitive, but no, that's coming from not abundance in childhood and being on my heels and saying, by God, I'm going to control as much as I can. I'm gonna I'm gonna try to figure out how I overcome scarcity, and I think I shouldn't say a lot, but many people come from that place, right? And it's not necessarily like a business mentality. I mean, who we are and how we've grown up, it usually carries over into our behavior in the workplace, right? It's really difficult to separate your personal and your work, and you need to compartmentalize them, but you don't change personalities. And I think that was the hardest part for me in the end is, I was swimming with sharks and had to sharpen my teeth, and that was that had there was some diminishing returns with that.
Yeah.
After a while.
And nothing's scarce anymore,
Yeah.
business wise at that point. I'm curious, because they're kind of conflicting, and I want to hear your mindset or your thought process behind it. I feel like in one perspective, being aware of scarcity can really help in the business world because you understand that you have to work hard and grind, and we've got to get our share. And, there's all these things where scarcity could help. But on the other hand, you also mentioned moving past the scarcity mindset, learning who you are as a business and deciding, ideal clients and things like that. Right. I'm just kind of curious, for you to unpack that. Like, do you feel like, I don't know, maybe pros and cons of both, or where the evolution took place for you when you felt like, okay, I don't have to have the scarcity mindset anymore? Or do you think that having the scarcity mindset played a impactful role in getting you to where you've ended up?
Yeah, it played a huge role. And I think that there's a time and place for that. But, when do you stop grinding? And what are the pros and cons of being a grinder? And I think that, you really have to be honest with yourself as to why you're doing it and what you're doing it for. Because I think we have our own narrative, right? And we convince ourselves of, oh, we're doing it for our family. I'm doing it so that, in the future, I can have a comfortable life. But do you ever stop? Do you ever really evolve that behavior once it's kind of truly embedded in your DNA? And that takes some serious growth.
Yeah.
Some serious personal growth. It's not business growth, it's personal growth.
Right.
Or else you're just going to grind everything to a pulp. Eventually, again, there's a point of diminishing returns to the grind. And people love it. You want to hire a grinder, right? If you're running an organization that has weekly commits, quarterly numbers, public-facing call-outs on a quarterly basis, your entire group is grinding.
Right.
And there's, that's the way the world works. But you get to choose how you play in that world, right? You can't also say, well, this is the default, and therefore I'm going to behave that way. You have a choice of how you act and what values and who you bring to the table.
Well, and it's interesting because the whole idea behind this chasing greatness, movement I'm trying to do is trying to unpack how to accomplish holistic greatness.
Yeah.
Balanced life with business and physical health and mental health and families and passions and things like that. And so I'm curious to hear your perspective, and it'll be a two-part question. Part one is, do you think that you can be successful in entrepreneurialism without the grind with a capital The? Follow-up to that would be, what's your thoughts on grind culture? Because there's, at least in my sphere of influence, which granted is not a perfect purview of the entire world, but the people that I have exposure to, there is in a lot of ways kind of a nobleness now with the grind. Mm-hmm. Blame inflation, blame the cost of living changes, all the economic realities, wages being lower than they've been, and now there's side hustles and side gigs and things like that, which is complex. And I'm just kind of curious, can you be successful in entrepreneurialism without the grind?
Yeah.
And what's your take on grind culture in general?
I think it's almost impossible to be successful without being a grinder as an entrepreneur. They're almost synonyms. Almost.
I think they exactly are synonyms, actually. Entrepreneur, grinder.
Grinder. Yeah. But the grind culture, I think, if you're single and you don't have a family and you're out there, that's probably a time to grind. And establish yourself. And if you love working, I loved working, still do. You learn work ethic, which is extremely important. But then there comes a point in time where there's some opportunity costs that you need to recognize. And what are those opportunity costs? And that's when I earlier said, you have to be honest with yourself. That's the check, right? What's the opportunity cost? And am I willing to continue to do that? Or do I need to sort of find some balance? And balance is sort of overused, but in this case, I can't think of a better word, because to truly grow and have that holistic success, you can't be imbalanced where you are 100% committed to a grind culture and you're crushing it day in and day out, but you suck at being a friend, husband, dad, or whatever you are, right? That's a poor stereotype, but whatever else is important in your life. And where does like your spiritual growth come into play? And there's a lot there. And so I think grind culture is one-sided, and it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. And you actually learn some bad habits, some really bad habits that are really hard to unwind. And again, it's really easy to create the narrative. It's so easy, because it's society rewards it, and it's really easy to justify.
Yeah.
And there's instant gratification for it, and so I think it's hard, very hard, to figure out how you, as an entrepreneur, but it doesn't have to be entrepreneur. I mean, we're talking about entrepreneurship, but let me park that for a second. It's really hard to evolve and grow as a human being, and as you get older and figure out how to find balance.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. There's so many. I've got a few responses to that, but one quick anecdote. But we found an old cell phone in my nightstand like last week, and we were like, "Oh, cool! We can give this to Nathan because it doesn't work, but it turns on and there's a camera and whatever." And we're like, "Now he won't bug us for ours," and tells you how little I know about parenting, by the way. But, we're like, here, dude, it's
Here's your
have
phone.
fun with it. Yeah, take photos, whatever. Well, I look over and, my 5-year-old's text necking down and on it. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And Nicole sent me a photo of him on it and was basically saying, like, I can't get him off of it. And I said, all right, well, we're going to have to hard stop. Day one, we're changing how this is going to work.
Yeah.
But, it also forced me to reflect on me.
Yeah.
And I've been, you talk about justifying it. I'm grinding for this great life for my family and whatever. And there's validity to it. There's truth 100%. To it. But I realized that when I'm home, I need to be home.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
I now when I have my phone out, I think of the emotions watching Nathan on his brought out in me.
Yep.
And I've realized I don't want that.
Yeah.
So what we've started doing is we've turned our phones on loud. So if something goes off, we can go check it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're not like these perfectionist parents by any means.
Yeah.
We still have to know when it goes off. But we put them on loud and set them on we've got a little like entrance table in our door for exactly that, of like this impossible pursuit of balance. Mm-hmm. And then it's been interesting. So as a leader, as the president of a company, I've got some employees that I just cherish. I mean, I love because they grind and they work so hard, but there's some personal obligation to make sure that they stay healthy as people.
Right.
But there's also some business incentive for me that they stay healthy and that, they stay productive and wanting to work. And so I've put in a lot of intentionality behind forcing some true time off and, trying to work hard, play hard. But man, that balance it's
tough.
It's so tough. It's impossibly tough. Difficult.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's the higher purpose right there is how do you self search for that balance, but then lead and enable others to help them find balance and encourage them to find balance. And that's true leadership to me, is when you're creating an environment and you're really enabling other people to grow, and you're in the journey too. You're not you show me somebody that's totally figured it out.
And I'll show you a liar.
Either that or or they're 5 years old.
Right.
Like my daughter has it figured out.
Yeah.
Right. But no, I think that's the that's the golden question, right?
Because you had, I don't know when in the timeline you met Celestia and your wife,
Yeah.
but you definitely, the kids came after the journey or at the latter part of it at the very
Very,
least,
very,
right?
yeah. Bodhi was 3 when I punched out,
Okay.
and Isla hadn't been born yet, or was about to be born, and so it was good timing, to step off the merry-go-round, and decide not to get back into the game, right? At in that field, and at that level, and it's just.
Because did you feel done though? Like, did you feel like you had?
I mean, I was burnt out. I was done for the time being, and knew I needed to make a shift. I wasn't exactly sure if, as a matter of fact, I thought I would, probably go back and put my name in the hat for another opportunity similar to what I was doing. But the more time I took off, the less it appealed to me, and the less I could see doing it again.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, that doesn't. There's nothing about that sounds appetizing right now.
Because
And
priorities had changed.
priorities had changed. I was a different. I wanted to be a different person. I didn't think I was. Even though I was a great provider, I didn't think I was meeting my obligation as a partner and as a dad. Now I had 2, and I lived here for a reason, and I was flying out of here every week,
Yeah.
and so I wasn't really here. And so I just needed to take a break and decide if that was going to be something I'd be interested in doing, later. And if I did, it was because it was fulfilling, not because I wanted to go make more money.
Right.
Right. It was because it meant something to me, and I hadn't, but I feel like I checked the box, and that there were other things that were interesting and fun, and would fill my cup,
Yeah.
hence kind of a whole new career.
As you say, chapter 2.
Chapter 2.
Would you,
Yeah.
looking back, with the benefit of hindsight, obviously,
Yeah.
anything you would have done different?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I would have probably stayed in the game longer.
As the owner?
No. In the in excuse me, in corporate America.
Got it.
When I say the game, that's what I'm referring to. I probably would have stayed in corporate America in one way, shape, or form longer, had I been able to figure out the sustainability of it, and sort of smooth out that grind, right? And really, train for that ultra, as opposed to being a 10K-er, right? In kind of
Yeah.
an analogy that you like, because it's very different, right? Yeah, I probably would have done that a little bit different, maybe, but maybe not, because now I'm able to put the kids to bed every night. I see them every morning. There's something to be said for that, right? A lot to be said for that, and I love where I live, and now it's the pursuit of the daily joys. And I think work's still important. I still have a very strong work ethic. I still find myself, once a grinder, always a grinder. I still find myself, falling back to some of those habits, and Fortunately, I have somebody that balances me out extremely well and reminds me often. And I think, you were asking, grind culture, place for that. Yeah, there's a time and place for it, and there's a time and place not for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that it's almost like sustainability matters, like grinding in spurts almost,
Yeah.
or when to grind or how to grind.
Yeah.
For example, I see either you or your wife every morning, and it's a priority of mine that I take the kids to school.
Yeah.
Because before that, I was the guy that I'd get to the office at literally 6,
Right.
6:30,
Right.
be here till 6,
Yeah.
6:30,
Right.
do it again.
Yeah.
And I have grown to cherish the weekday mornings. Sometimes I find myself feeling anxious. Sometimes I find myself feeling frustrated even. Like I already have emails or I've already missed a call or, whatever
Yeah.
it is. But it does force me to slow down. And it's actually one of the things, and I'd be curious, I'm going to ask you if this has come, since you've left the game or if you had it when you were in it. But it's forced me to intentionally slow down, which is also something I have picked up whenever I get a chance to bend your ear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've even expressed that to you, that there's something about your mentality or your presence, or even maybe it's even your cadence of speech, but that reminds me to slow down and be present in a really refreshing way. Because I think that if I can figure out how to grind with balance, grind with a sustainable way,
Yeah.
slow down when I need to slow down,
Right.
be present when I need to be
Right.
present, you flirt with a pretty cool combination. So I'm curious, did you have this calm, cool, collected Mike French, for the whole time, or did that come after?
No, that came way after. I'm a different human being today.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy for me to, pontificate and about
Tell me what to do.
Yeah, about grinding, not grinding when, and again, this is what works for me. I think everybody needs to figure out what their values are, what their purpose is, what fills their cup, and then how it works for them.
Yeah,
Individually, individually as a unit, as however that works, and because we all have different lives and are different human beings with different ideas, and that's beautiful. We don't want everybody to be the same. The world needs color, and so it's great to have all flavors. My perspective is my story, and it's not necessarily yours or anybody else's. And I can spend 30 minutes with you over a cup of coffee and kind of help you see around the corners because I've seen them. But how you do that and who you are is yours, and it should be right. And getting some.
I was hoping you had a crystal ball for me.
No, and getting some input from people who've done it is really valuable because there's nothing like experience. Period. End of story. I mean, you can't buy it.
Yeah.
Right. And so if somebody's willing to help you with some of that, then it's that's what got me through. I mean, there's no way that I would have been able to do what I did without the guidance and mentorship and people holding my hand and people believing in me and giving me a lot of their time, energy, and experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them.
And that's what's so cool is, I've gotten to hear in depth your perspective on community and things like that. And we share similar, beliefs with the power of community. And I think that's one of the coolest things about, and I almost feel like it's especially, and I have the benefit of that I work with other entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. So many of my clients are entrepreneurs, and there's this kind of level of like mutual respect. Like we understand what you're dealing with,
right?
You understand what I'm dealing with, and there's sort of a rallying. And I've found too that like any endeavor in life, but entrepreneurialism, I think, in a little bit of a more significant way, or at least a more spotlighted way, you start to learn what you're made of. Like you start to realize that you can overcome these adversities, and you can overcome this roadblock, and there's almost that like there's another level of confidence with it.
Yeah.
Like the things don't bother you like they used to because I don't know, you're like weathered. You know, you've been through the storm before, which I think stuff like that is really powerful. Like I was my wife's you know this, but for the audience, my wife's a real estate agent.
Right.
And so nobody signs our paychecks.
Right.
You know, she signs hers, I sign mine, like that's how we get paid. And a while back we were just reminiscing about some current events, or, you know, something that was going on, and the narrative of our conversation was, wouldn't it be nice if we cared about that? Like if that was where our energy went, you know, right now. And we were saying it tongue in cheek because it was so trivial. And what I'm getting is that I think it's cool because you start to be very intentional about where you spend your energy,
Yeah.
and the things that you pay attention to,
Right.
because you don't have energy for the reality show or the current drama, you know, of fill in the blank. You're like, I've got real problems, you know, that need my energy. And then when I'm not, I'm with, so those things I'm really grateful for how hard it is, but it's also impossibly difficult. I mean, I've told Nicole over and over again, sometimes I wish I wanted less. Like sometimes I wish that I could be satisfied with, you know, a 9 to 5 middle management, you know, suburban job, but I'd go crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I was getting at with all that is that to your point, you do need the different flavors because, and I think it's so important because we all put these same parameters on what success looks like, and usually it's monetary. There's so many people that don't want that,
Right.
but that pursue it anyway because it's what society, you know, like what we're conditioned to think we need. And I think that if people can figure out how to align their lives with what matters to them, and knowing that that can change, we end up with a pretty cool mix of grinders and people with balance, and some people want to play.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Van life it, and I think that's amazing too.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, our biggest value and our largest currency is our time. Right, that's something, and we kind of don't recognize that until I think until a little bit later on in life, where it's like, gosh, I am mortal, and there is some finite time, and what am I doing with it, and why, and you know, and that sort of creates a little either sense of urgency or B, change of perspective. But you're so right. And, you know, the other thing I think that happens is we all get really caught up in our own world, and we forget like there's this big world around us, and not just our fellow human being, you know, who's probably on the same struggle bus that we are on at times. But I mean, look around the world and like what's happening. And so I agree with you that it's hard to look at the news and relate it to your life. But when you think about how, and I hate to say this, but we have first world problems
in a huge way.
And but the struggle's real too, right? So you can't be like, oh, well, that's a first world problem, so you know your struggle's not real, and that's not true either. But it breaks my heart to see, you know, what's going on in some places of the world, and there's no right answer. I mean, just, you know, look at what's happening in the Gaza Strip right now.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, when I think about like, more children have been killed in the last 4 or 5 weeks than in several years in that kind of violence.
Yeah.
In wartime violence. And it's, yeah. I mean,
It definitely makes you, to your point about time too, it puts, because yeah, there are real problems. I've got payroll to make next
yeah,
week. That
yeah,
matters.
yeah, it matters.
But seeing those things also, I think, help with that balance
It
of
does.
knowing, like, because for me, so much of the time I end up taking it with,
Yeah.
I empathize in major ways. In fact, sometimes I have too much empathy. Sometimes it's a problem, but I empathize and then I transition it to gratitude.
Yeah.
Like I'm grateful for what I have. I'm grateful that my kids, it's kind of like elevating my rock bottom.
Yeah.
Like, at least I've got a safe family,
Right.
generally speaking.
Yeah.
It was such a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah. Exactly. All of a sudden, these things that we get really wrapped around the axle with are not as big a deal. And I'm not diminishing or minimizing, our struggles or anything like that. But let's kind of broaden our perspective, and then that helps kind of create a little bit of context of, and I think that's really
It can almost help create the balance.
exactly. It's it allows us to have some gratitude and look at things a little bit differently and be like, okay, gosh, I'm not counting my lucky stars enough because I'm taking all of this for granted and think that I'm entitled to this, and therefore I need to, for the next step, that's what I need to struggle and worry and be anxious about. But everything underneath that, I'm entitled to.
Right. I deserve it.
I deserve it. I've earned it.
Yeah.
I live here. And it's like, well, yeah, but God bless you for that too. And yeah.
So coming back to the time thing, how do you spend your time now? What's this? Because you've kind of got the benefit now of clarity.
A little bit, yeah.
To some more than me at least.
Well, I pretend.
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job faking it. But you do have, I think, a journey that has provided some powerful perspective, and the means now also to essentially choose how you're spending your time. I know that you still choose to work.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I'm just kind of curious, now, because of the luxury of choice.
Yeah.
How are you choosing? How does your balance look? What do the choices of time look like now?
I mean, there are some choices, but in my mind, they're not, right? I want to work because I want to have my kids see dad work and learn work ethic. That's really important to me. And if I don't, that's okay too. But for the time being, that's sort of important, right? No matter what I do. In terms of my time, I try to figure out how I am showing up, not only, to the community, but
To podcasts.
to my family, to my kids, and I realize that there's work to be done there, right? I can absolutely improve on many fronts, and those are the things that I'm working on now. Like, what I've realized is, at this point in my career, I'm not a great manager, and I'm not going to spend time polishing my managerial skills. I'm going to try to lead a little bit and do what I can, but and I'll mentor where I have the opportunity, but I'm not going to be manager of the year, anytime soon. And that makes it hard for the people that work with me. And, I'll be really honest about that, right? Makes it really hard. But I try to surround myself with people, be really transparent, that have a lot of self-responsibility and know what they're doing, are very capable, and figure out how to support them. Can absolutely do a better job there, but that's my MO. At home, there's just a lot of growth happening, and me trying to figure out how to be as great of a partner and a parent as possible. And you know this, parenting's probably the hardest thing that we'll ever get to do.
Makes entrepreneurialism look easy.
And it's the highest purpose that we can absolutely do, right? And so now's the time. Now, I mean, I've watched, and I have young children, but how fast they've grown up is scary. And knowing that I'm more than halfway through that with like my son, it's like, wow, what happened? And everybody warned me about it, and everybody said, oh, this is going to be so fast. And it's not the speed, it's the getting it right, the investment, the presence, and then the purposeful legacy that you're creating. Which reminds me, I have an awesome book for you, and I'd love to share it with you. And it's written by a really good friend of mine. He's a neighbor. He's an Ironman athlete, father of 4, entrepreneur, second generation businessman here in Durango, by the way. And he wrote this book called Purposeful Legacy.
What a powerful statement, purposeful legacy.
Yeah. And he wrote it on accident. He wrote it because he wanted to capture the idea and put it on paper, because he's also an academic, right? He's a philosopher, an economist, and he said, I really want to write this book for my children. And then he self-published it and said, if I can help other people, great. But the whole idea is, what are the legacies that you've inherited from your family, multi-generation, or from your parents or what have you? What are those legacies that you want to keep and pass on and be purposeful about it, and what needs to change? And then, him being an economist and being in the finance business, what's the relationship of money, and how does that relationship from generation to generation to generation have a chance of success? So what is the secret of generational wealth? And it's a really interesting book.
I'm going to buy it just for the title.
You don't buy it. I'm going to give it to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And he should be in my seat, because he's done tons of podcasts, has his own very, very successful podcast. And I think you'd really...
A purposeful legacy.
Really, and I might be butchering the name, but...
Well, regardless, purposeful legacy, I love that's so profound of a way to look at things. And it ties it all in with, balance and how we spend our time and priorities. And it's just, it's a powerful statement. And I think kind of themes the conversation, which is cool.
Right. And I, in preparing for this, I listened to a couple of your previous podcasts, and one of the themes that has come up is like self-care, right? And you asked me how I'm spending my time, and I realized that, as we get older, we have to spend a little more time and energy on ourselves, and making sure that that we're growing, we're continuing to grow, and that we are the best person, our best selves that we can bring to the table, so that we can be a great partner, a great parent, a great leader, a great, business person, what have you. But that doesn't just happen. That requires some intent.
You have to be purposeful.
You have to be purposeful. And that's hard when, you kind of have this guilt association of selfishness or what have you, but it's quite the opposite. And I've heard that on a previous podcast, and I could not agree more.
It's like Carrie said at the summit, I think it was 2 years ago, but there was a whole presentation on, I'm going to butcher it now, but that self-care is a discipline, not a luxury.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I don't see how. I mean, look at the most successful athletes and how much time and energy they spend on not just the conditioning and their body, but they take it to the next level. And yeah, I think if you're gonna be a high performer, a high performing dad, a high performing partner, you've got to put in the work. You really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike, thank you so much. I know how valuable time is. And so I especially appreciate you, letting me bend your ear and giving me time today. Thank you for being such a good example of being the best version of yourself possible, knowing that we're all, a work in progress.
Yeah, we're all human.
Thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your mentorship. Thank you for your leadership in the community and the impact that you're making here. It's significant, and I'm just genuinely glad to know you. I really appreciate it. There's a tradition.
Okay.
I have Inspire by Example shirts.
Love it.
For the guests, and I want you to have that because you very sincerely do inspire me through example. The path, the journey that you've been on, the story that you've had, but also the story that you're creating in chapter 2, and getting to watch your intentionality and where you spend your energy and all of that. It's just incredibly insightful and powerful. And I probably learn more from you than you realize. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. So thank you a ton for all of it.
No, it's a joy and a pleasure to sit down and capture some of this, right? This is, if this feels like just another cup of coffee, only now
we just have these cool headphones.
Now it's going to be on the internet.
Yeah.
But no, thank you for the opportunity. And I'll figure out how to continue the conversation with you over cups of coffee, and also see if I can get my good friend here. And I think he'd crush this podcast.
It'd be amazing.
Yeah.
I'll hold you to the introduction.
Okay. It's going to happen.
Thanks a ton, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you.